The Bears are in a familiar spot with the #1 overall pick. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it, since their own pick is currently slated at 10. Per our Ryan Wilson and his mock draft, we're giving you the top 10 here. It looks like they stay with Justin Fields to the Chicago Bears, trade down and get him some help with that first pick at 3 to Marvin Harrison Jr. And that means Caleb Williams and Drake May will go to the Commanders and Patriots, respectively. Let's say Happy New Year to Ryan Wilson, and also with this mock draft, explain yourself here. So let's talk about what we do with the Bears, and we'll get to Chicago in a second here. But you have the Commanders going all the way up to 1 to get their quarterback, and not just any quarterback. It's the presumptive #1 overall pick in many people's eyes with Caleb Williams.
Happy New Year's, Tommy, and do not be fooled by the Mr. Rogers sweater here on the first day of 2024. We're about to get spicy with this little exclusive, by the way, HQ mock draft done especially for you and producer Stryker here. So, right. The Bears are sitting at #1 by virtue of the Carolina Panthers being not very good, but they moved down not once but twice, and the first team to move up, come on in, the Washington Commanders. It looked like Sam Howell was going to be the guy, not just to begin the season, Tommy, but as recently as 5 or 6 weeks ago, because my last mock draft for the website on December 4th had the Commanders taking a quarterback, and Commanders fans were not happy about it. A lot has changed in the last 4 or 5 weeks. We've seen Jacoby Brissett come in. He would have started had he not tweaked his hamstring. Sunday, Sam Howell played through 2 more interceptions and has taken a beating for much of the season. There's probably going to be a new coaching staff there. And if that's the case, new coaches and new GMs sometimes like to have their own quarterback. And if Caleb Williams is your guy, and Caleb Williams is QB1 in terms of what he has done on the field the last 2 seasons, you go up and get him, because you're not going to win a lot of football games without a franchise quarterback. It'll cost you a little something, as the kids like to say. And these trade details, which aren't necessarily the biggest part of the conversation, but they're based primarily on what the Bears did in 2017 when they moved up from #3 to #2 to get Mr. Trubisky. But that aside, if you like Caleb Williams and you're picking top 3 and you don't want to pick there frequently, you go get that quarterback.
All right, you'll get that quarterback. We gave out the draft compensation, and per this theme of the mock draft, Chicago continues to amass draft capital, because then again, they go from 1 to 2, and then you have them going from 2 to 3. That means the Patriots go up. And what did they give up to go up?
So, again, it's a similar compensation to what the Trubisky trade was in 2017. Bears fans don't like to talk about the Trubisky trade because that was the same draft that included Patrick Mahomes, of course. So the Bears go down 1 more spot. And here's the thinking if you're Chicago, right? You don't want to go down so far that you miss out on Marvin Harrison Jr. So you have to keep in mind that the Arizona Cardinals are picking at 4. As we currently sit here, the Arizona Cardinals are probably happy with Kyler Murray, and they would love to have Marvin Harrison Jr. So you see the trade details here. The 2024 first-round pick, the Bears get to go up, the Patriots go up to #2, and they're taking quarterback Drake May because they cannot go into the next season with Bailey Zappi and or Mac Jones. Probably a new coaching staff there as well. We'll see how that sorts itself out. But the Bears receive basically the #3 pick. They get 2 third-round picks. They get 2 fourth-round picks and 2 more third-round picks in next year's 2025 draft. So all that compensation just to move down 2 spots and to still get the guy you want in Marvin Harrison Jr. And the Patriots get Drake May, who's going to be in the conversation for QB1 along with Caleb Williams. Some teams like Drake May and some teams like Caleb, but he's going to be one of the first 2 or 3 or 4 picks off the board, and he's going to be a guy that's going to probably start right away for the team that drafts him, because that team is not going to be very good. I think Drake May is an immediate upgrade from what we've seen over these quarterbacks. And if you revamp the coaching staff, that means Bill O'Brien probably isn't calling plays, and that could be in the best case for any young quarterback in New England. But again, the Patriots get their quarterback, and the Bears move down 2 spots, and they get their guy because you alluded to it, Tommy. They're sticking with Justin Fields.
Okay, they're sticking with Justin Fields under this exercise. Again, getting help with Marvin Harrison Jr. What other sort of thought processes go through your mind in terms of trying to get Justin Fields help? Is there any other consideration other than Marvin Harrison in that scenario?
Not here if you have the 3rd pick and Marvin Harrison Jr. is there. But there is a scenario where if you have to trade down to 6 or 7, or you're comfortable trading down to 6 or 7, there's going to be a ton of wide receivers in this draft. We're going to see a lot of them in the college football playoffs, primarily in that Washington football team, but also in the Texas football team. Even Alabama has Jermaine Burton, but he'll be a day 2 pick. But if you're 6 or 7 or 8, Tommy, you could get a Malik Neighbors, a Rome Odunze. There's going to be Adonai Mitchell out of Texas is going to be in that conversation. But I think if you're a 3 and you want Marvin Harrison Jr. and you're comfortable with Justin Fields, and Justin Fields has proved himself in recent weeks with his play, especially on Sunday in bad weather. He had one of his best games this season, if not his best game, throwing the football and also running. I think you have to get him help. DJ Moore has been a game changer in terms of getting them a #1 wide receiver. That was part of the trade last April, where they moved down from 1 to 9. That allowed them to eventually get Darnell Wright, their starting right tackle. So the math here is this: another playmaker opposite DJ Moore to help your young quarterback Justin Fields, who finally seems to be putting it together. You could continue to solidify the pieces around him with all the draft picks you have. The defense is balling out since a Montez Sweat trade, and you can continue to solidify the defense. And suddenly, Tommy, we're not talking about a team that finds ways to lose football games. We're talking about a team that automatically should be in the 9.5 and over conversation going into next season and in the playoff picture.
All right, we'll get to Chicago's second selection, but we're kind of going in chronological order here. So let's get to the Giants. You have the Heisman winner Jaden Daniels going to NYG despite there being, you know, a quarterback that they paid there in Daniel Jones recently.
Yeah, Daniel Jones suffered an ACL, unfortunately. He may not be ready for the start of 2024, and that contract was structured as such, Tommy, they can get out of it after the 2024 season. Tommy DeVito was a fun story. He's not the long-term answer. Tyrod Taylor is good at what he does, and that's probably being a backup that you can rely on for 3 or 4 or 5 games. And Jaden Daniels, no one has done more to help himself in terms of his professional future over the fall than Jaden Daniels. And he has had a remarkable story arc coming back from his days at Arizona State, where he left that program, and they were not unhappy to see him leave with the on-field production. He's a great kid, went to LSU, and you see him throwing them league neighbors here, another guy who could be a top 10 pick, and he transformed what that offense was able to do. And you might say, well, they're not even in the college football playoffs. They might not have had a winning record if not for Jaden Daniels, and he is truly special. And Tommy, I think there's a conversation that he could be in the quarterback 2 conversation as well by the time it's all said and done. Different type player than the other two in Caleb and Drake. More Lamar Jackson for me. Guess who's winning the MVP? Lamar Jackson. So I think if you're the Giants there, and Brian Daboll's done a great job, but they've been beset by injuries this year, I think Jaden Daniels is going to get serious consideration as not only a top 10 pick, but maybe a top 6 or top 5 pick.
Okay, so that would be 3 quarterbacks going to the top 5. And getting back to Chicago, it's interesting. They keep winning, which is a good thing because they have that security blanket in the Carolina pick. So for a lot of weeks, you had Chicago anywhere between 6 and 8, and you had slotted Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Alabama. Now they're at 10. You've got the kid Verse there, who's also an edge rusher here. I guess the question then becomes, what's the gap or what's the drop-off between those two similar players in terms of position-wise?
So this trade down scenario is best case scenario for the Bears because they get Marvin Harrison Jr. And even though, as you mentioned, Tommy, they're picking 10 now and they're quote unquote settling for Jared Verse. Jared Verse, there's very little, if any, difference between Jared Verse and Dallas Turner as an edge rusher. And sometimes what happens if you're looking, for example, for an offensive tackle and you have to take offensive tackle 3, there's a big drop off between offensive tackle 2 and that third offensive tackle. No such situation here with Jared Verse, who had a monster season in 2022. Surprised a lot of people when he returned to Florida State. Came out and had another monster campaign. The numbers weren't quite as they didn't light up the stat sheet quite as much as they had the season before, but just as productive, just as disruptive, and he is going to be a top 15 pick easy, it feels like, and I think he has a chance to be a top 10 pick. And by the way, you bookend him with Montez Sweat, who has been dominant for Chicago since the trade, and that gives you a front 4 that is getting after it. You have a secondary that is young and played really well this year, and again, you have all those draft picks to go out and move up and down the draft board, trade for established players. You have so much at your disposal in terms of creating the roster that you want going forward. And oh, by the way, you have Marvin Harrison Jr.
That's pretty good Chicago-centric type of mock draft that you got laid out there. Thanks to Ryan Wilson. Happy New Year. If you want more draft stuff, check out their podcast with the first pick. Ryan Wilson, Rick Spielman. I know they had a mailbag episode recently, and after the holiday season, getting back to taping 2 podcasts a week.